The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the quiet suburban neighborhood. The soft light bathed the rows of well-kept homes, and in front of one, a meticulously groomed lawn lined with roses welcomed the women arriving at Clara's house. It was their monthly gathering, a sacred tradition filled with wine, laughter, and gossip as old friends shared the ups and downs of their lives. For years, these nights had been a source of comfort, a place where they could unburden themselves. But tonight, something was different. There was an unspoken tension in the air, a current that ran beneath the surface of their usual easy smiles. Clara had always been the perfect hostess. Her home was a vision of domestic bliss, with every detail carefully arranged. She and her husband, Ethan, were the couple everyone admired, their marriage seemingly solid and full of laughter. Their bond appeared unbreakable, at least, that's what everyone thought. But tonight, Clara's thoughts were far from her hosting duties. Her mind was consumed by something dark, something so suffocating that it had begun to fester within her, poisoning her from the inside out. One by one, the women arrived. First came Lisa, the outgoing single friend who always seemed to know everyone's business before they did. Then Sarah, the quiet one, who rarely spoke but always seemed to be listening, observing with an intensity that made it clear she was never out of the loop. Jess, the career woman, arrived next, always juggling her busy life with sharp wit and a never-ending schedule. Finally, Emily came in, late as usual. Her eyes darted nervously around the room, her posture tense. Emily had been acting strangely for months, becoming distant, often skipping their gatherings or arriving late. Her eyes looked tired, her smile seemed forced, and rumors had begun to swirl, but no one had dared to pry. Clara, however, was determined to find out what was wrong tonight. The atmosphere felt heavy, ripe for confessions. The wine flowed, and conversation hummed with its usual rhythm. Yet beneath it all, there was a growing tension that Clara couldn't shake. Her stomach churned, and her fingers tightened around her wine glass as she caught Emily glancing at her nervously every few minutes. "So, how's married life treating you, Clara?" Jess asked, her tone light but edged with something more. The question cut through the hum of conversation, and Clara felt a wave of unease. She forced a smile, hoping to keep her composure. "Oh, the usual," Clara replied. "Ethan's been working a lot lately, but we're good. Solid." The words tasted bitter as she said them. Lisa, always quick to dive in, added, "Yeah, I heard he's been traveling a lot for work. I don't know how you manage it. I'd go insane with my man being gone so much." Clara's smile faltered. A pang of guilt struck her. Ethan had always been good to her, always tried to make her happy. But recently, their marriage felt fragile, like a house built on shifting sand. She had convinced herself it was nothing, just the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship, until she found the messages. The memory hit her hard. It had been just 3 days ago when she stumbled upon them, completely by accident, while using Ethan's computer. A series of emails, texts, and private messages exchanged with another woman. In that moment, her world crumbled. Everything she thought she knew about her life, her marriage, shattered in an instant. She hadn't confronted Ethan yet. She didn't have the courage to face what those messages truly meant. But as she sat there, surrounded by her friends, their laughter and chatter filling the room, Clara knew she couldn't hold it in any longer. The conversation flowed around her, dipping in and out of gossip and laughter, but Clara barely registered any of it. She was consumed by the weight of her secret, the truth of her broken marriage pressing down on her like a heavy stone. Clara's mind was in turmoil, a storm of emotions swirling, rage, confusion, and deep hurt. Across from her, Emily sat unusually quiet, her fingers trembling slightly as she nervously sipped her wine. Something was clearly wrong. "What's going on with you, Em?" Clara asked, her voice lower than she intended, laced with concern. Startled, Emily looked up. "What do you mean?" Clara frowned. "You've been distant lately. We've all noticed." Her tone was more insistent this time. "Are you okay?" The room, filled with their friends, fell into an uneasy silence. All eyes turned to Emily, waiting for her response. Emily shifted uncomfortably, avoiding their gazes. Her eyes flickered with something Clara couldn't quite identify. Was it fear? "I'm fine," Emily replied quickly. Too quickly. "No, you're not," Sarah interjected gently but firmly. "We've known you for years, Emily. Something's wrong." Emily's gaze dropped to the floor, her hands gripping the edge of the table as though she was trying to anchor herself. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. I can't." Clara's heart pounded in her chest, her concern deepening. "Can't what?" "Emily, you can tell us." For a moment, it seemed as though Emily would stay silent. But then, as if some unseen dam within her had broken, the words rushed out. "I've been seeing someone," she confessed, her voice barely more than a whisper. The revelation hit the room like a bomb. The air thickened with the weight of it, and shocked gasps and whispered exclamations broke out among the women. Emily flushed with shame, her cheeks turning crimson. She stared down at the table, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Clara's heart raced, a sick feeling growing in the pit of her stomach. She had known something was off with Emily, but this was more than she had ever imagined. "Who is he?" Jess asked, her voice cutting through the tension. Curious but not yet condemning. Emily hesitated, her lips quivering. It's not just some guy." She took a deep breath before continuing, her words fragile but deadly. "It's Ethan." Clara's world stopped. The room seemed to tilt around her, the weight of those two words slamming into her like a physical blow. Ethan, her husband, her best friend, the man she had trusted more than anyone. The betrayal hit her like a punch to the gut, leaving her reeling. For a moment no one moved. The women sat frozen, wide-eyed, as though waiting for Emily to say it was all a mistake, a cruel joke. But it wasn't. "You've been sleeping with my husband?" Clara's voice was barely a whisper, but the accusation in it was crystal clear, raw with hurt and anger. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "Clara, I never meant for it to happen," she said, her voice cracking. It got out of control. "I'm so sorry." Clara stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, the sound deafening in the stillness. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her mind raced to piece together everything that had led to this moment. Ethan's unexplained absences, Emily's recent strange behavior. The truth had been right in front of her, and she hadn't seen it. "How long?" Clara demanded, her voice trembling with the effort to stay composed. 6 months, Emily whispered, her face crumbling with regret. "I'm so sorry, Clara. I never wanted to hurt you." 6 months. For 6 months, the two people she trusted most had been deceiving her, sneaking behind her back. Clara felt like her chest might explode under the weight of the betrayal. "I think you should leave," Clara said quietly, her voice cold and steely. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face as she gathered her things. She walked to the door, her steps heavy with shame. The other women sat in stunned silence, too shocked to speak, their eyes following Emily's retreat. The door closed softly behind her, leaving Clara standing in the ruins of what she had believed was her perfect life. She turned to face the remaining women, their expressions a mix of sympathy and helplessness. No one knew what to say. "I need some air," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. She walked toward the back door and stepped into the cool night, the garden silent and peaceful in contrast to the storm raging inside her. The scent of roses hung in the air, but it did little to comfort her. Under the stars, Clara stood alone, tears streaming down her face as the weight of her shattered world pressed down on her. Everything she thought she knew had crumbled. Her marriage, her friendship, her entire life had been built on lies. But as the cool air brushed her skin, something shifted within her. She wasn't broken. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to rebuild herself from the ashes of this betrayal. But first, she would have to confront the truth. She would have to confront Ethan, and she would have to confront the part of herself that had been blind to what was happening. In the stillness of the night, Clara made a vow. She would face the truth, no matter how painful it was, and she would find a way to survive it.